Welcome everyone to the Fight Sites Combat Sports News Recap. I am Iggy, and today we're going to go over last week's events, talk about some of the more interesting and relevant news, as well as touch upon some of the fight announcements that have been finalized during the week since the last episode. UFC 260 took place at the UFC Apex Arena last Saturday. As always, Ed and Sriram have recorded an alternate commentary track for the event, which you can check out on our Patreon for as little as $3 per month, which also grants access to almost all of our Patreon content that we've released over the years. Or naturally, you can listen to the free audio-only version on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Right, at middleweight, Marc-Andre Barriault defeated Abu Azaitar by TKO in the last seconds of the third round. A fairly comical sequence of events led to Abu Azaitar absorbing what many feel like an entire 3 minutes worth of unnecessary damage, where Azaitar had first got clipped with clean punches, got rocked with clean punches after gassing heavily after two fairly hectic rounds, and getting clipped led to him losing his mouthpiece, after which he bent down to retrieve the mouthpiece, like just as if he just dropped his car keys. And the referee in charge, Jared Valel, failed to call a stop to the action to help Azaitar retrieve the mouthpiece, and naturally Marc-Andre Barriault pounced at the opportunity, pushed Azaitar over like one would push over a cow, and this led to Azaitar being forced to absorb almost an entire round's worth of heavy damage until Valel basically found a shred of humanity, the last remaining shred of humanity within his soul, then he stopped the fight with like 4 seconds remaining. And that was our early prelims. Only one fight. And then at featherweight we've had Omar Morales squaring up against Shane Young. Omar Morales defeated Shane Young via fairly straightforward unanimous decision. And then at light heavyweight, Michał Aleksiejczuk defeated Modestas Bukauskas by split decision in a respectably action-heavy back-and-forth fight. And then at welterweight, Abubakar Nurmagomedov got the best of Jared Gooden, winning by unanimous decision. The featured prelim was a light heavyweight bout between Alonzo Menifield versus Fabio Cherón. Cherón missed weight by about half a pound over the non-title fight light heavyweight limit and conceded the victory to Menifield. Menifield had apparently absorbed Ovince St. Prue's meme choke abilities and secured the victory by submission via one flu choke in the first round. Moving on to the main card, at light heavyweight, Jamie Mullarkey was able to knock out Kamel Worthy with a left hook in the first round, this being Worthy's 7th knockout loss, having most recently been knocked out by Ottman Azaitar a year ago on September 12, 2020, in the co-main to UFC Fight Night Watterson vs Hill. One begins to wonder whether continuing to pursue an MMA career is even a good choice for Kama, and indeed whether it is at all advisable from a medical standpoint. Though I suppose ultimately it's only up to Kama to decide. Next up was a women's flyweight bout between Miranda Maverick and Jillian Robertson. Maverick secured her win via unanimous decision. And then the much-hyped bantamweight prospect Sean O'Malley faced the ghost of Thomas Almeida and won the fight by knockout in the last stretch of the third round. Given that O'Malley was on paper a bit of a nightmare matchup against Almeida, being long, tall and favouring long straight blows for the most part, as well as being a southpaw, it could be argued that O'Malley didn't necessarily look all that impressive, coming off as being rather poorly conditioned even for a 3-round fight, much less a 5-round title bout. But time will tell if O'Malley will be able to address these issues going forward. Our co-main was a welterweight fight between Vicente Luque and Tyron Woodley. Woodley came into the fight reeling from a 3-fight losing skid, first losing the belt to Kamaru Usman, then losing the title fight eliminator against Gilbert Burns, and then losing finally to Colby Covington. Having essentially lost 15 entire rounds in a row, Tyron Woodley obviously looked to alleviate his usual issue of being way too passive, basically, and he looked drastically more aggressive early on. Unfortunately for Woodley, his aggression was pretty one note, throwing nothing but loopy overhands from the get-go, and spending massive amounts of energy in inefficient clinch exchanges along the cage. Woodley lost the fight via Dar's choke after getting countered by the razor-sharp striking of Luque, and spending almost an entire minute barely clinging on to consciousness, thus marking the 16th straight round Woodley has lost. A rather sad outcome, considering that Woodley looked like he was finally trying to bring about some sort of a mental turnaround, which isn't easy when a fighter is young even, but is especially hard when you're pushing 40 and reaching the back end of your career. Luque isn't exactly a spring chicken either, having spent most of his career in exciting back-and-forth slugfests. The man with the iron chin also happens to be a magnet for opportunities where he is able to show off that quality. Nonetheless, it made for a reasonably exciting showing from both. Our main event was the heavyweight title rematch between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. Stipe Miocic was coming off a grueling trilogy with Daniel Cormier, where he managed to accrue almost an entire hour of hard, immensely damaging cage time, while Ngannou had barely spent 5 minutes there, having finished all of his opponents in the first, thus creating a headache for fight analysts worldwide with the sheer lack of data on whether he's improved or not. Short answer, yes he has. Long answer, yes he has, but Stipe has also given Ngannou carte blanche to just try cool stuff, to try cool stuff out on him by throwing zero meaningful volume, having been apparently stopped by Ngannou's newfound composure and ability to lead. And Ngannou has shown much improved striking and much improved takedown defense, with the caveat that the single leg attempt from Stipe was incredibly slow and sloppy, and that he's looked incredibly gun-shy from the word go. That said, all we needed from Ngannou was to show that he now trusts the process that is being instilled in him by his coaches, and that's exactly what he did, by mostly sticking to fundamentals, leading with the jab, using throwaway strikes to set up bigger ones, and showing that he now understands that being such a massive hitter, he doesn't really have to put 500% into every strike. For example, the way he used his throwaway lead right, which he used to set up his stepping power jab, stepping power left, or left straight power jab, whichever you want to call it, which caused the knockdown right before the finishing sequence. He's also used long right straights to the body, and even countered Stipe's jab with a low kick at one point. He demonstrated the ability to check hook in the second round by timing Stipe's telegraphed entry on the body shot, and then used it to finish Stipe after the champ got too eager to hop back into the fight after countering a rush from Ngannou with a powerful right hand, which Ngannou quickly recovered from. Not an ideal performance technique-wise, but one that demonstrated competency and composure. It was a mental turnaround as much as a technical one, and if this new version of Ngannou sticks around, we might be looking at a new era in heavyweight. Stipe set the stage for Ngannou's improvement, and here's hoping Ngannou will force a divisional shift towards heavyweights, learning their fundamentals and sticking to them, instead of engaging in comedic slopfests where the person that learns first and the hardest wins. Who knows? Maybe heavyweight will finally get good. Why is everyone laughing? What are you laughing at? What is everyone laughing at? This is good, this is a good thing that's happening. What is everyone laughing at? KFS that took place that same weekend, headlined by a long-awaited bout between Leona Peters and Takeru Shigawa, a veritable fireworks show of a fight that I highly recommend every fight fan to check out. Right away, Leona demonstrated why so many people were giving him a shot at beating what is arguably the world's scariest tiny person, alongside Davis and Figueiredo, using lovely in-and-out movement, lancing Takeru up with straight with straight blows and walking him onto knees. Takeru, meanwhile, used his low kicks and pressure to lure Leona into exchanges that didn't favor the taller man, where it almost became a case of be careful what you wish for. Leona buzzed Takeru in round 1, and then ended up being dragged into a hooking exchange, and almost got knocked out for his trouble, with Takeru dropping Leona in a sequence not unlike the end of the first round of Adesanya Whitaker. Leona nonetheless rallied and forced Takeru to take a knee momentarily in round 2, but got dinged with a left hook again, which then spiraled into a series of fast-paced exchanges, where Takeru was able to land the cross-counter and finally put Pettis out. As it is always the case with big violent fights, slapstick was abound. First, Takeru landed a huge nut shot on Leona. It was bad enough that Pettis looked like he was about to throw up, but thankfully Pettis was able to recover. And then the ref failed to call a knockdown for Pettis after Takeru was forced to take a knee, and then he failed again to separate the fighters after Takeru forced Pettis to take a knee in turn, which then allowed Takeru to ring Leona's bell some more with vicious offense, arguably leading to the final sequence that cost Pettis the fight. Nonetheless, the fight was good enough that all this comedy isn't likely to affect anyone's enjoyment that much. It was awesome. Go watch it. Alright, let's go over some of the standout moments of the week so far. Dana White came out immediately after Ngannou's victory over Stipe with his usual song of professional fighter doesn't want to do his job, saying that if he were Jon Jones he'd consider moving down to middleweight because you don't want to mess with this Ngannou. And I mean, it's an old hat with Dana at this point. The man can't resist shit-talking his own employees in what I presume he thinks is a form of tough love, but nonetheless it cultivates a toxic environment in which fans pick up on what the boss is saying and begin harassing fighters on social media. I mean, granted, fans don't need much encouragement to do that anyway, but then again, that is exactly my point. They don't need much encouragement. They don't need encouragement. They don't need encouragement. Like, full stop. Jon Jones' retort on social media was thus: pay me more and I'll fight whoever. Regardless of your feelings on Jon Jones personally, I do not hold him in high esteem as a human being, but he is correct in this case. Fighters absolutely need to be paid more, and according to him, he received only $500,000 for his last pay-per-view, which is an absurdly low amount for what is ostensibly the UFC's greatest fighter ever. I mean, regardless of whether you buy this idea or not, all I know is that fighters are paid peanuts compared to athletes from other sports. I mean, Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier received $350,000 and $250,000 respectively for what is arguably the greatest fight in the UFC ever. I mean, come on. Nonetheless, Jon Jones wouldn't be Jon Jones if he didn't immediately do or say something baffling. And in this case, he decided to draw a line in the sand at performing a lap dance for Satan. Jon Jones threatened to burn all his Nikes over Lil Nas X's last music video where the artist performs a lap dance for Satan. Lil Nas X launched a limited edition line of 666 custom shoes produced by Nike, which he calls Satan shoes. And allegedly the soles of the shoes contain a mixture of ink and a drop of human blood. Jon Jones didn't like that. Moving on. Dan Hardy shown the light on his recent job disputes with the UFC. To recap, Dan Hardy was recently relieved of all his duties at the UFC currently, and the details are yet to be made public. However, Dan Hardy alleges that this situation is the result of a simple misunderstanding, and I quote, "The incident on Fight Island, it was a disagreement between myself and another employee of the UFC who I feel was obstructive in helping me do my job. And I asked the person why, and I felt like I was told a falsehood, which I called them out on. And that's my side of it. I love the UFC. I always will. I'll always be a huge fan of the UFC, and it's been a big part of my career and a big part of my life. I have nothing against the UFC or Dana or anything like that. Of course, if they called me up and they're like, hey, parachute on a Union Jack flag. Parachute on a Union Jack flag for UFC 261. I'd be there in a heartbeat. It's just a weird place because I just don't know. Just kind of don't know exactly what's happened. And my concern is that Dana's got a perspective of the situation that's not true. And that's what concerns me more than anything. I could not sit octagon side ever again as long as Dana has this misconception of who I am, because that would really frustrate me. You can check out the rest of Dan Hardy's posting in his appearance on Submission Radio and the transcript of his side of the story. The transcript of his side of the story is available on Bloody Elbow. And next up... Bellator released their own pound-for-pound rankings the other day. You can check them out on Bellator's official website if you want a good laugh. All you need to know is that Corey Anderson is ranked 10th pound for pound. And this week we have a bit of a break in the UFC's relentless schedule, which is rare and nice, with the nearest event slated for April 10 in Vegas. And this is that's UFC on ABC2, headlined by Darren Till and Marvin Vettori. Oh wait, Ariel Helvani just tweeted that the fight is off for whatever reason. Alright, fight announcement so far. UFC 262 had been mostly filled out, and so far it looks like this. Main event, Chandler vs Oliveira. Check out our round robin of violence panel for our preview of the matchup. The co-main is Diaz vs Edwards. That is Nate Diaz vs Leon Edwards, thus marking the first 5-round co-main event in UFC history, as well as probably an attempt to give Nate Diaz a home field advantage, so to speak, which is pretty funny, because Nate is probably going to gas and get his face lacerated with elbows even worse than he already would have gotten pieced up if this was a 3-rounder. Next up, Dariush vs Ferguson. Dariush is on a tear while Ferguson is on a skid. Stay tuned for a preview of this matchup. I'm sure our grappling specialists Ben Cohn and Tommy Elliott will have lots to say about this fight. Then we've got Barboza vs Burgos, aka Feed Cater vs Pressure Cater. Then we got Jack Hermansson vs Edmund Shakbazyan, both coming off losses to Vittori and Brunson respectively, one more devastating than the other. We'll see if Shakbazyan manages to redeem himself as a hot prospect. And then we've got Araujo vs Chukagian, the old Babachuk, with Araujo coming off a comically lopsided victory against Roxanne Modafferi. Just poor Roxy. Then we got Andrea Lee vs Antonina Shevchenko, and this is followed by Perez vs Schnell. Then we got Jacare versus Muniz. I mean, it's just Jacare versus a guy with no Wikipedia page. This is just sad. Then we got Pickett versus Wright. And Alvarez versus Giagos. Giagos. Rafael Alves versus Damiris Magulov. Gotta honor the time-honored tradition of marinating good Russian prospects on the prelims until they turn into the human equivalent of an expired pickle, I guess. And finally we got Priscilla Cachoeira versus Gina Mazzani. Fuck yeah! Fuck yeah! Let's go! And then related to UFC 262, Misha Tate versus Marion Renault on July 17. Don't look at me, I don't know either. Alright, that's it for today. Check out the Fight site for analytical content and our written works. Check out our Patreon for exclusive custom content like resume evaluations, more fight breakdowns, alternate commentary tracks, and more. Almost all of our existing work becomes available at the $3 tier, while $5 gives you access to our Discord server, where you can hang out and converse with our staff and other like-minded fight fans who appreciate the technical side of the sport in all its intricacies. We're about to approach our stretch goal of 200 patrons, after which we're going to release 5 articles and 5 commentary tracks dedicated to our top 5 best MMA fights ever. So stay tuned. Don't forget to check out our main channel for technical breakdowns and shorts, and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more long-form content such as this show and our discussion panels. This has been the Fight Site Combat Sports News Recap, and I'll see you next week. Peace.